Ferrari LaFerrari Review. The LaFerrari is very possibly the world's fastest, most exciting hypercar. Which is some statement to make when there are machines such as the McLaren P1 and Porsche 918 Spyder to contend with. The bottom line, however, is that LaFerrari has more power, a whopping 950 bhp, and less weight to carry around than its prestigious rivals, so figuratively, if nothing else, it quite clearly has the upper hand. Either way, this is the ultimate Ferrari, and it has but four ancestors: the 288 GTO, the F40, the F50 and the Enzo, each of these being a limited series car, just like LaFerrari, of which just 499 will be made during the next 2 years. At the center of the car, behind its two fixed carbon fiber seats, sits a 62cc naturally aspirated V12 engine that generates 790 bhp at 9,000 revolutions per minute and 516 pounds-foot of torque at 6,750 revolutions per minute. On their own, these outputs would be sufficient to make LaFerrari more potent than the Scuderia's last V12 F1 car, the 412T from 1995. But also behind and beneath the seats sits a 60 kg lithium-ion battery pack which, via a 25.7 kg electric motor, provides a further 160 bhp and 199 pounds-foot to give combined outputs of 950 bhp and 715 pounds-foot. However, entirely unlike its rivals from Porsche and McLaren, the Ferrari's power unit has been designed to produce its maximum outputs all of the time. There is no E-mode that can be engaged as such. Instead, the combustion engine and the hypercar system have been engineered to work as one, with energy being constantly harvested on the move, via the brakes, the ABS system, the traction control system and even the E-diff, to deliver full beans, as in 950 bhp, whenever you want it. The prodigious energy produced by this so-called power unit is then sent to the rear wheels, and the rear wheels only, via a 7-speed dual-clutch auto gearbox, made for Ferrari by Getrag. This also has an electric motor attached to it, with a dedicated gear set that transmits drive directly to the final drive, thereby reducing the need for a typically vast clutch. The meticulous removal of weight runs as a key theme throughout the supercar's engineering. And this is but one example. As with the P1 and 918, LaFerrari features a carbon fiber tub onto which the engine and suspension are mounted. At each corner there are double wishbones, carbon fiber at the front, and coil springs with electronically controlled dampers, plus an enormous carbon ceramic disc brake made by Brembo, those at the front measuring 398 mm, those at the rear 380 mm. Electronics play a huge role in the car's engineering, and in the delivery of its vast dynamic repertoire. Wings at the front and rear are actively deployed on the move to provide two radically different running configurations, high and low downforce modes. Mostly, these exist to provide the maximum amount of grip and reduced drag required at any given moment, with a maximum of 360 kg being produced at 124 miles per hour when cornering, or a minimum of 90 kg at 124 miles per hour when traveling in a dead straight line. On the move, the car decides how much downforce it needs, not you. Intriguingly, the active wings also play a key role in cooling the engine, the batteries, the gearbox and the carbon ceramic brakes, too. The cabin of LaFerrari is a deeply exotic place in which to find yourself, as you'd expect, but it's also smaller and more intimate than you might anticipate, despite there being 30 mm more headroom than in an Enzo in order to accommodate drivers wearing a crash helmet. And that's because the driving position itself is so low-slung, with a fixed seat but movable pedals and steering wheel. Ferrari claims the driving position is halfway between that of a normal sports car and a Formula One car, with the driver's backside sitting at broadly the same height as their toes. Sit on the floor against a wall with your arms and legs outstretched but slightly bent, holding on to an imaginary steering wheel, then shift your bum forward so that your back is at an angle of 32 degrees to the wall, and you'll get a rough idea of how single-seater the driving position feels. And the rest of the cabin is very much in the same vein. There are 3 different instrument styles that can be dialed up within the TFT digital dash display, all with the rev counter dominating to varying degrees. Anyone who's ever been fortunate enough to sit in a 458 will recognize certain elements immediately, but there's a sense of purity inside the Ferrari that elevates it above any of Renault's other cars. It feels quite a lot like you're sitting inside a very well-appointed Le Mans car, actually, with swathes of Alcantara and buttons for the sat-nav where normally you might expect to find switches marked rain or pit lane speed limiter. However fast and furious and noisy and exciting to drive you might imagine LaFerrari to be, double it, add 20 and you might, just maybe, get somewhere close. I find myself vibrating with excitement as I prod the starter button, squeeze the huge right-hand gear paddle to select gear ratio number 1 and rumble out onto the track for my first few tentative laps, with the Manatino switch set to race mode. Other than this now familiar dial on the steering wheel, there are no other buttons to play with, nada, Ferrari deciding instead to let the car do the talking, which is a refreshingly pure ethos to adopt. The ride instantly feels spookily smooth and calm, the steering surprisingly light but bursting with a delicious, old-school kind of feel. The brake pedal also feels light underfoot but is again rippling with feel. And the throttle response, the first time I go anywhere near the loud pedal, is just outrageous. The car explodes down the back straight even on half throttle in 4th gear. And that's what you get when you integrate electric power with a thumping great V12. At low revs the electricity provides the torque, and provides it instantly, and from there on up, at about 3,000 revolutions per minute, the V12 takes over. Yet the transformation is so smooth you are never actually aware that it takes place. Instead, it feels like the car is powered by a 10-liter V12 that somehow has massive low rev response at the same time.